Before I begin today's video, I just wanted to say this video took me a while to make, so if you could please drop a like and let me know how I did on this video, that would be greatly appreciated. Hopefully you guys are all right with the length of the video. I did include timestamps, so if you want to check out a certain character, you're more than welcome to, and you can just, skip ahead to do that. Be sure to check out the description for helpful things like the best Trove Mods that I use, a gem guide, a gem boost guide, the best allies, and there's going to be other stuff in there as well. So be sure to check out the description for anything else that will be helpful to you guys. Another thing that I wanted to mention is that most characters don't really have the best hidden effects for their rings. So if I don't say a specific one for whichever class I'm talking about, then I'll link a website that tells you which ring effects do what. So you can pick one of those from there if you find one that sounds pretty good. If I missed something, then be sure to check out the comments section for anything that might be in the pinned messages or anything at all for a certain class that I might have missed. And lastly, in my next video, I will talk about the best classes to use in 2022. This is just going to be a video on how to build every class. So without further ado, let's begin. Starting things off with Bard. Bard is a really good class and actually pretty underrated. Not many people actually know how to use this class, but if you do, then that's also pretty good. Not only is Bard a really good farming class, but he also deals a lot of damage as soon as you get all of your buffs up. And the main thing that I'm going to say is all you have to do is try to keep your buffs up at all times. So as you can see, whatever ability it shows on the screen there, you're just going to want to do whatever it says to build your bar. And it's a little bit tricky to get used to at first because you have to keep track of whatever is going on. And on top of all of that, you have to obviously do your farming. So it is a little bit tricky to kind of get used to, but there are mods and there are ways around it. And obviously the more you play this class, the more easier this will become in the future. Just note that if you want to start, the buffs in general, you want to use your ultimate. That will be the purple thing. And every time you use the purple one, there's a blue little bar on the bottom right below the smaller bars, and you want to make sure that stays, towards the right side, towards the higher end. So if your bar is ever low, try to find a purple that's on the bar just above it and see if you can, raise it that way. But if not, there's a really easy cycle that you can go through that I use sometimes. So if you want to do that, just wait a little bit longer towards the video and I can show you exactly what I mean by that. Also note that the colors on the bar are going to be the exact same every single time you use this class. And to start things off, the purple one is going to be the one that starts, your buffs, the song in general. And then the other three buffs that you have is the green one, which is the Jubilant song. So this will cause your allies to dance and gain a 25% increased movement speed and 30 max energy. It buffs allies with a 50% chance to restore energy when dealing damage. So the green one is going to be the movement speed one. Then you have the blue one, which is Peaceful Song, the plus sign. This is the healing buff, so you heal nearby allies by 20% of max health and buffs them with 8% life gain when dealing damage. Additionally, this stuns nearby enemies for 1.5 seconds. And lastly, we have the red sword one, the battle song. So this is going to be your attack buff and you deal a lot of damage when you get maxed out. And when I say maxed out, you have 3 stages to Bard's buffs. So if you ever notice the bar on the bottom, you have the little ones, then it gets slightly bigger, and then on the far right, it gets even bigger. The bigger ones are going to be where your buffs are going to be, the higher ones. So you have pretty much 3 stages of buffs for Bard. And if you want to make the most out of them, you want to make sure you're on the right side and activate those buffs. Bard can be used for farming in U10, U9, wherever you name it, and as well as delves. And if you want to know how to build this character, let's get straight into that. Before I get into the build for Bard, I just wanted to talk about the ultimate and how the buffs exactly work. So you start things off with this purple one. The purple one is going to be really helpful because, so I'll use my ultimate here, and as you can see now the bottom thing turned green, but I'm not going to worry about that right now. So I'm just going to fill up my bar, just do whatever abilities it tells me to do. And as you can see, we are now at the second stage because the bar, we're on the bigger part of the bar there. So I'm just going to continue filling this up. So once it hits purple, you can see that the blue thing, it goes up because I just used my ultimate there. And I'm just going to fill up my bar all the way, and now I can use all of the buffs. It's sometimes buggy. Sometimes you have to wait, don't spam it, and just let it do its thing. But as you can see, I have the buffs. I got all of them. You don't really need all of them. You don't need the healing one when you're farming, but I guess you can have it as an option. So what you can do is just fill up your bar all the way, just like this, what I'm about to do, and then just use all of your abilities, just like that. Sometimes it is a bit glitchy, like I mentioned, but you will get there. Just make sure you're not spamming your ultimate and just fill up your bar. And as you can see, once it's purple, you can use your ultimate and your bar status continues But if I were to use my ultimate here, for example, you go down 3 bars. So hopefully that makes sense. Just note that every time you see purple, that you're gonna go up. So I got at the end, I'm just gonna activate all of my buffs here, and I'm just gonna continue my progress again. So like I said, it's purple, I can use it, and it went up as you can see there. And I'm just gonna continue the song over here, and I'm already at the end. I can just use all of my abilities, all of my buffs here, and as you can see, there we go. We have all of them again. So you can just cycle through them, just wait until it gets to the very end, and then just press everything that you have with your ultimate. Just make sure you're not spamming it, just, you know, press it, wait a little, press it, wait a little, and yeah, you'll be good to go. Alright, so going on to the build for Bard, I have Crystal 4 gear for my hat, I have movement speed and attack speed. As you can see there, they can be swapped around. And that stat right over there where jump is, you can have magic find. I just have jump for whatever reason. I didn't really bother changing it. For my weapon, I have pretty much the same thing, movement speed, attack speed, and then magic find right there as you can see. Next up we got the face, and for this one, same thing, movement speed, attack speed. This one I have health. I can obviously get magic find in that spot as well. As for the hidden effects, you can literally just use whatever you want for the Bard. There isn't like a specific main go-to one. Then for the food, you're going to want to use the electrolytic crystals. This is going to be the best food in the game as of right now, unless there's like other events or other things in the future that give you more light or just better stats in general. Next up, the ally that I use is over here called Orchian or Orchian. Still don't know how to pronounce it, but it gives you a bunch of light as well as a bunch of magic damage, and you also gain a movement speed boost when a nearby enemy dies. Next up, my banner over here is movement speed. I have upgraded permatorch for my Bard. So pretty much if you get an upgraded U10 permatorch, you can just take it to either you just go to Uber 10, Uber 9, or Uber 8. There's a bench there and you can just upgrade the torch there. Now here's where things get a little bit different because I don't know many people that actually do this specific part for their emblems and flasks. Shoutouts to Stego or Chilling for showing me this. Also shoutouts to Celeste. But pretty much for the flask, I use Vial of Unleashed Power. Now, I know what you're thinking. Like, this is a little bit crazy, a little bit outside the meta for flasks, as you can see. Usually, most people will use Death Defying, or they might use this one for more flasks, or the Conjurers for the Magic Find one, or even some people will use this one to duplicate their minions. So if you have, like, Evil Eye, for example, it'll duplicate the eye for extra damage. But I use this one, and I don't really have myself dying too often in U10. I just kind of manage my health pretty well, and I never run out of flasks. I never have to go rejuvenate. This is pretty easy. But the idea of this flask is pretty much every time you use your ultimate, you're going to be triggering both of your emblems. So you'll get the speed from this trailblazing, and not only that, but you don't have to worry about energy at all when using your ultimate or anything in general, because this emblem will take care of that for you. So right now, if I were to press my ultimate, I'm going to get the trailblazing bonus. So if I just do that, as you can see, my movement speed increased and my jump went up a little bit as well. This is a very underrated flask. Not a lot of classes are going to be using this one, but I found that for the Bard, it's actually really good and not many people actually know about this one, so I highly recommend this. But if you can't get it, or if it's too hard for you to use, you can obviously just swap to other ones. You can just use Death Defying, or you can use Conjurers. And last but not least, I have the Knight's subclass ability for extra flasks. Now moving on to the gems, you're going to want to get the Clash Gem for Bard. Bard is going to have a good Clash Gem. I highly recommend getting this one. And since you're probably going to be farming, go for Vampire and Vanquisher and Pyrodisc. Those will be good for farming. And I have Mired Mojo. You can replace that with either Cubic Curtain or Explosive Epilogue. They're both great choices. And as far as the stats go, you want to go for magic damage, crit damage, critical hit, and you want 0 boosts into critical hit. And by boosts, I mean this. You want to make sure none of these little boosts are on critical hit. And then for your cosmics, just make sure you don't have critical hits. And since light is the meta for Trove, as of right now, you're going to want to move all of your boosts onto light so you can get extra damage. It just won't affect your coefficient. And yeah, that's going to be it for the Bard build. Vanguard is not my personal favorite class to use, but he is a pretty good farmer, and you can also use him in delves if you want to. He has 2 different forms. He has the long range attacks and he has the close distance ones. I just use the close distance ones for farming. But if you use your ultimate, then you can just switch to the long range one or vice versa. And then if you use his other ability, you gain a little movement speed boost, so that's why he's pretty good for farming. And you can just, you know, do a quick punch in and leave the dungeon, and you know, you can just keep farming this way. He's a physical damage character and he's pretty good, I would say. Like I mentioned earlier, he's just not my personal favorite to use, but yeah, let's just get on to the build. For my Vanguard, I'm using attack speed, movement speed on all of my gear here, and I found that around 235% is a pretty good mark for attack speed. Yeah, I feel like I don't really need anything else. So I replaced my face over here with crit damage. And ideally, since you're going to be farming with Vanguard, you want to go for Magic Find like I do there. These ones, the gear that I have over here do not have that. The hidden effect that you're going to want to go for is combo like I have there. For the food, you're going to want to go for Electrolytic crystals. This is going to be the best one in the game as of right now. As for the ally, you have a couple options. You can go for the animated jug. You can also do King Koba for the 10 movement speed permanently. You can do Chester for the 30% physical damage, the Magic Find and the movement speed, or an alternative would be this Dev Dream one if you do have this one. If you don't have it, then that's totally fine. As for the banner, I don't really have a permatorch upgraded for my Vanguard, but if I did have one, I would go for a movement speed one with physical damage. As for the emblems go, I have Trailblazing for the speed. I use Conjurers because I have high Magic Find. You can swap it with Death Defying if you really want to, and I use Chronomatic. If you don't do enough damage, then you can just swap to the Martial emblem, and this will increase your physical damage a lot. So if you're fighting enemies, that'll be really helpful for you guys. And lastly, I use the Knight subclass, but you can also use the Candy Barb subclass for extra movement speed if you happen to trigger it. But if you want extra Magic Find, you can also just use the Pirate Captain subclass. Moving on to the gems for my Vanguard, I have the Flash gem, and since you're going to be farming with Vanguard, you want to go for Vampirian Vanquisher and Pyrodisc. And I use Stinking Curse, but you can swap it for Cubic Curtain or Explosive Epilogue. And the stats that you want to go for are physical damage, critical hit, critical damage with no boosts into critical hit like this one has. The boosts are up here, not over here. And for your Cosmic Gems, you want to make sure you have no critical hit, and you want to make sure all of your boosts are into light. For some reason, I have mine on crit damage. That's a no-no right there. And yeah, that's going to be the build for Vanguard. Moving on to the Dino Tamer. Dino Tamer is actually going to be one of my favorite classes to use. I did enjoy using them back in the day when I was like brand new to the Trove. He's a pretty quick character. You can farm with him, and you can also do low depth delves with him. You can go all the way up to depth 128 with him if you really want to. I like him for farming. The only issue I had with him was if you hit your ultimate at a certain time, sometimes you'll get stuck in the animation in between states of you just like, it'll just look like that you're gonna go to the hub, your like hands are gonna be like praying type thing, and you're just gonna have to swap characters to fix that, and then swap back and then wait for your ultimate cooldown. And the other thing is that if you press your ultimate while you're on your little dino, like your ultimate ability, it's just gonna cancel it out. So just make sure you keep the duration of your Dino Tamer unless you want to leave it, and then just have the cooldown ready for you to use your ultimate again so you can farm with them. So with that out of the way, let's get onto the actual build. Starting with the gear, I have attack speed, movement speed, and I found that having around 230%, and I have 266. If you have attack speed somewhere around there, then that's fine. But I just have attack speed, movement speed across all of my gear. I just replaced it on this one for crit damage. Since I don't really need to have too much attack speed, this is already plenty for me. For the hidden effect for the ring for Dino Tamer, you're going to want to go for Deep Wounds, which I do not have at the moment. For the food, you want to go for Electrolytic crystals. This is going to be the best one in the game as of right now. So for the ally, I use King Koba, and I'll tell you why in a second, but this is a pretty good one. It gives you a bunch of light, permanent movement speed, and the main thing here is that it has a chance to reduce cooldowns on your ability when you kill an enemy. So if you use your ultimate and if you just keep killing enemies, it'll lower the cooldown. So the more enemies like Cursed Skulls, you'll just get your ultimate back up instantly. So that's why I really love this one. This is a really good one. Some alternatives would be Orcheon, or if you have this Dev Dream one, that would work as well. I don't have the permatorch upgraded for U10, but if I did, I would go with one that has movement speed on my Dino Tamer. Next up, I use the Conjurer's Vial, and if you don't have the Magic Find, you can just use Death Defying or whichever one that you usually use. But I use Trailblazing and Arcane Emblem, and if I use King Koba like I have here, I can just remove the Chronomatic Emblem that, you know, when you press Q, it reduces your cooldowns. When I kill an enemy with King Koba, it already does that for me, so I can just replace that with Arcane, and I pretty much have a free emblem spot. I already do enough damage, but just in case, I can just use the Arcane for extra damage. So this combo is already super good for Dino Tamer. I really like this one. I haven't really seen anyone ever use this kind of combo before, but if you do, then also that's pretty good. Shoutouts to you guys. And if you don't have this option, just, you know, swap around to what you do have until you get something like this, or just whichever one that you prefer. For the subclass, I have the Candy Barb one for the chance of the movement speed. Some alternatives would be the Knight subclass or the Pirate Captain subclass. Moving on to the gems, you want to make sure you have the Clash gem for Dino Tamer, and since you're going to be farming with them, just make sure you use Vampirian for farming, as well as Pyrodisc so you can get that movement speed buff. And I have Explosive Epilogue, which is good, and if you have Cubic Curtain, I would just go for that one. That one's also really good. Then moving on to the stats, you want to go for magic damage, crit damage, critical hit, and have no boosts into critical hit. And for the cosmics, just make sure you do not have critical hit and have all of your boosts into light, because that is the meta for Trove as of right now. And that is going to be the build for Dino Tamer. Moving on to the Lunar Lancer, he's going to be a great class for farming, and you could farm with him in delves, but I wouldn't really recommend it. There are other classes better than him for delves, but if you really want to, you can use him as a damage dealing class, so we'll just have to build him a little bit differently, but he's pretty good at farming. And pretty much with the Lunar Lancer, you want to attack some enemies, charge up your orbs. There's going to be 3 little moons around you, and once they're fully white, you can actually use your ultimate ability and you'll gain more movement speed, and all of your abilities will be a little bit different, but they are really cool. He's actually really fun to play. I do like this Lunar Lancer, so if you do like him, try him out. He's pretty fun to farm with. And yeah, let's get on to the build. For Lunar Lancer, I have attack speed, movement speed for all of my gear apart from this one over here. I use crit damage to replace my attack speed, mainly because I have a bunch of attack speed. I have all of the dragons and stuff in the game that give me permanent stat boosts. The hidden effect that you want for Lunar Lancer is called Need for Speed. I don't have it on this current Lunar Lancer, this Crystal 4 ring, but maybe in the future I'll get one. The best food in the game as of right now is this one over here, Freerange Electrolytic crystals. The ally that I use is over here called Chester Eggington. An alternative would be to use this one over here called Animated Jug. You can also use King Kobo for the permanent movement speed, and if you do have it, you can use this Dev Dream one, but I don't have it. But if you have it, you could also just use this one. It's a pretty good one. For flasks, you can use Conjurers or you can use Death Defying. You can go with Trailblazing with Marshall to do extra bit of damage. I have the Knight subclass over here, but if you really want to, you can use Pyre Captain for the magic find or Candy Barb for the movement speed. If you're going to be farming with Lunar Lancer, you can go ahead and get his Clash Gem. I do not have it. You'd also want to have Pyrodisc. I also just don't have Pyrodisc on my Lunar Lancer, but you do want Vampire and Vanquisher. Cubic Curtain is a good one, as well as Explosive Epilogue. I just don't have the best ones for my Lunar Lancer. The main stats you want to focus are on physical damage, crit damage, critical hit, no boosts into critical hit like you see here. For the cosmics, just make sure you don't have critical hit, but make sure all of the boosts are into light. And that is going to be how you build the Lunar Lancer. Chloromancer is a top tier DPS character, and if you want to farm with him, you can, but it's not really the most ideal thing to do. There are better farmers than him to use. But when it comes to single target DPS, Chloromancer is going to be super good for that. So if you fight a Leviathan or a boss in a delve, you can use Chloromancer. This was recorded before his recent nerfs, so when you see me hitting Q to, you know, throw down the plant, you're gonna have to press Q twice now to throw it down. That's the only difference, and apart from like the damage changes that happened. But yeah, pretty much you're gonna be doing the same thing, just throw it on your plants, but you're gonna have to press Q twice this time to throw it down. It's a little bit more tedious, but it is what it is. With that out of the way, let's get on to the build. For Chloromancer, I have attack speed, movement speed, but you should probably swap movement speed for crit damage. I was messing around with Chloromancer, so just replace movement speed with crit damage. Unless you really want to farm with Chloro, then you could just have this setup right over here. For the weapon, I have attack speed, movement speed, but just replace movement speed for crit damage. And then for the face, I have crit damage, magic damage, and attack speed. For the ring, the best hidden effect for Chloromancer is going to be Gatling, Gatling, Gatling. For the food, you want to use this one over here called Freerange Electrolytic Crystals. This is going to be the best one in the game at the moment of me recording. Next up, we got the Orcian Ally, which not only gives you a bit of movement speed when you kill a nearby enemy, but it gives you extra light and extra magic damage. This is the Permatorch upgraded that I have for my Chloromancer, so this is a good one to use. Next up, I just use Death Defying. If you really need the extra flasks, you can use this one over here, Elysian Bandolier. I probably just said that name completely wrong, but you guys know what I mean. And for the emblems, I use Arcane for extra damage and Chronomatic just to get my abilities quicker. For the subclass, you can use the Knight subclass. Bard subclass is really good for DPS. For whatever reason, if you want Magic Find, just use Pyre Captain, and if you want extra movement speed, just use the Candy Barb one. Moving on to the gems, the Clash Gem is optional, you don't really need this one. Berserk Battler to do more damage. And Cubic Curtain is just a nice one to have. Stinging Curse is also another good one to have for DPS because it deals a tiny bit of extra damage to enemies. And if you don't have any of these, just use Explosive Epilogue as an alternative. The main stats you want to focus are on magic damage, critical hit, no boost into critical hit here. For the cosmics, just make sure you have no critical hit and you want all boosts into light. And that is going to be how you build the Chloromancer. Moving on to the Rev. The Rev is actually going to be a pretty good farming class. He kind of feels like a heavy type class, if that makes sense. Like with Neon Ninja, I kind of just feel loose. I can just kind of move around. With Rev, I kind of just feel heavy. But Rev is also a pretty good DPS class. He's a strong physical damage DPS character. But from what I know, a lot of people use Rev for farming. He's actually pretty good at that. He used to be used for Daughter of the Moon speedruns, and if your delve has magic resist characters, you can just use Rev to clean up the enemies there. But anyway, let's get on to the build. For my Rev, I have attack speed, crit damage, but if you're going to be farming with him, just remove the crit damage with movement speed. Same with all of the other gear, just have attack speed, movement speed, and if you have too much attack speed, I'd say the 230% mark is pretty good. At that point, you can just replace it with crit damage. But yeah, just go for attack speed, movement speed. The best hidden effect for Rev is going to be speed spears. For the food, you want to use electrolytic crystals because this is going to be the best one in the game as of right now. You can go ahead and use jingles if you want to, or you can use other alternatives like King Koba over here, or you can use this Dev Dream one called Clownish Kicker, or you can use Chester Eggington over here. So you have some options. The banner that I have over here is attack speed, but you can replace that with movement speed. Just make sure you get the torch that represents that specific stat. I use Death Defying, but you can obviously just use Conjures if you have the Magic Find, and if you don't do enough damage, you can use the Martial Emblem for extra bit of damage, and Trailblazing is going to be a good one as well for the movement speed. Next up, you can use the Knight subclass. If you're farming, you can use the Power Captain one for the Magic Find, or you can use the Candy Barb one for the movement speed. If you're going to be farming with Rev, you want to make sure you use Vampire and Vanquisher. If not, then use Berserk Battler for damage. Pyrodisc is going to be a good one for farming. Cubic Curtain is good, and Explosive Epilogue is good. I just don't have it, and his class gem is optional. You can get it if you really need an empowered gem spot, but if not, then just go with the ones that I have here. Just replace this Mired Mojo that I have over here with explosive or something, and you'll be good to go. The stats that you want to focus are on physical damage, critical hit, no boosts into critical hit. For the cosmics, just make sure you don't have critical hit and have all boosts into light, because that's the meta for Trove right now, and that's going to be the build for my Rev. Tombraiser is actually a pretty fun class to use in delves. You can use him up to the depths of 128 in delves. You can even farm with them if you really want to, but Tombraiser is really good at taking out all of the creatures in the delves, because you can just set out your minions will attack the creatures. If you have the objective where you have to clean out certain rooms, sometimes you have to stay in that room because sometimes your minions won't target that. But if you're just there to kill creatures, just, you know, put out a couple minions here and there and then just keep rushing. But yeah, it's super fun to use, and let's get on to the build. For Tombraiser, you're going to go for movement speed, crit damage, because this character is not going to be using attack speed, and you're going to want to use movement speed, crit damage for all of it. The best hidden effect is going to be Scale Bagel Split. For the food, you want to use electrolytic crystals because this is the best food in the game as of right now. The ally that I have is Orcheon. Gives you some light magic damage and extra speed when you kill an enemy. The banner that I have is the Permatorch upgraded, and I have the movement speed one. For flasks, I have Death Defying, but you can use Conjures as a substitute, and I just have Trailblazing and Zelius. For the subclass, you can use the Knight one, you can use the Candy Barb one, or you can use the Power Captain one. For Tombraiser, just make sure you get the Clash Gem, and make sure you have Vampire and Vanquisher for farming, and Pyrodisc. If you don't have those, don't worry, you don't have to use it on Tombraiser. Tombraiser's minions won't follow you if you have the extra bit of movement speed, so if you just take off, your minions just won't follow you. So it's kind of optional on what you want to do. Explosive Epilogue is good, Cubic Curtain is good, so just keep that in mind as well. But yeah, you can use anything for Tombraiser. The stats that you want to focus are on magic damage, critical hit, no boosts into critical hit. For the cosmics, just make sure you don't have critical hit and have all of the boosts into light, because that is the meta for Trove. And that's going to be the Tombraiser build. Moving on to the Boomeranger. Boomeranger is not really one of my favorite classes to use. I just prefer not to use him. He's one of my Lasermancy classes, but even then I still don't even use this character. You can use him for both farming and for damage, but like I said, I just don't prefer to use him. But if you do like him, just go ahead and use him. I'm just personally not a big fan of this character, but if you do like this character, then let's show you the build. For Boomeranger, I have crit damage, movement speed for all of my gear. Apart from this one, I have health regen. Just ignore that. You can use crit damage, but if you really want to farm, just replace it with movement speed. The best hidden effect for Boomeranger is going to be Blast Bow. The food, you want to use electrolytic crystals here. This is going to be the best one in the game as of right now. You can use jingles. If you want to farm, you can use animated jug. You can use King Koba. You can use this Dev Dream one if you have it, or you can use Chester Eggington. So it's up to you on how you want to play Boomeranger. I have a different setup because I use my Boomeranger for Lasermancy, but I kind of change things around, and I'm still experimenting with Boomeranger. But you can use Deathifying, you can use Conjurers, you can also use Vial of Unleashed Power if you really want to. You can use Trailblazing, and if you want to do damage, you can use the Martial Emblem. The subclass, you can use the Knight subclass, you can use the Power Captain subclass, or you can use the Candy Barb subclass. For Boomeranger, just make sure you get his Class Gem. I do not have it. If you're farming, use Vampirian. If you're doing DPS, just use Berserk Battler. You can get Pyrodisc, you can get Cubic Curtain, you can get Explosive Epilogue. You can use whatever on Boomeranger. The stats that you want to go for are physical damage, critical hit, critical damage, no boosts into critical hit. For the Cosmics, just make sure you have no critical hit and have all of the boosts into light, because that is the meta for Trove, and that's going to be the Boomeranger build. Moving on to the Draco. The Draco is actually a pretty fun character to use. You can use him to farm low depth delves, like anything below 128. He's pretty fun using at depth 40 or just anywhere below 100 as well. You can even farm Uber 9 with them. You can also go to Fireworld. He gets a movement speed buff from lava actually, which is pretty cool. He is pretty tanky with his ultimate, and you can also hide behind the Draco minions. So if you throw the minions down with the Class Gem, you can kind of just hide behind those while you deal damage, so that's also pretty cool. And as far as delves go, you can throw your minions down. It'll take out a decent amount of enemies in the floor, so you don't have to worry about that too much. But overall, I would say Draco is a pretty fun class to use, and let's get on to the build. For Draco, I have movement speed, crit damage on all of my gear. Apart from my weapon, I have energy regen. For Draco, you can just use any hidden effect that you want. For the food, just use electrolytic crystals. This is going to be the best one in the game as of right now. For the ally, I would use Orcheon over here, or Orcheon. This is going to be a good one. I don't have a banner on my Dracolyte, but if I did, I would use a movement speed one. For flasks, I have a death defying one, or you could use Conjurers. I would do Chronomatic to get your cooldowns quicker, and if you want to, you can swap this for Zelius or the Arcane Emblem or Trailblazing. It's kind of up to you. For the subclass, you can use Candy Barb, you can use the Pyre Captain one, or you can use the Knight subclass, or you could use the Bard one for extra damage. For Draco, make sure you get his Class Gem. If you want to do damage, use Berserk Battler. If you want to farm, use Vampirian Vanquisher. Make sure to get Pyrodisc if you want to farm. Cubic Curtain is a good one. Explosive Epilogue is a good gem as well for the Empowered. As far as the stats go, just make sure you have magic damage, crit damage, critical hit, no boosts into critical hit. For the Cosmics, you want to go for no critical hits, but have all of the boosts into light, because that is the meta for Trove, and that is going to be the build for Draco. Moving on to the Gunslinger. Now, you're not going to use this class for farming, and if you do, I wish you luck, because I did that when I first started the game, and I struggled a lot. This class is going to be a pretty good DPS character. It actually used to be used for Daughter of the Moon speedruns, but then once Delves came out and other classes got buffed, Gunslinger kind of fell a little bit, and just recently he actually got a little bit of a nerf with the most recent patch, so he's not really going to be used as much for DPS because there are other classes better than him. But if you do end up using this character, he's going to be a DPS character, so let's get on to that build. For Gunslinger, you probably want to have a DPS build for him, if not just replace crit damage for movement speed. But I have crit damage, attack speed on everything. For my face, I have magic damage, as you can see right over there. For the hidden effect, you can use whatever one you want to for Gunslinger. For the food, just use electrolytic crystals. This is the best one in the game as of right now. For the ally, you can use Orcheon. It's going to be the one down over here. For the banner, I just have this attack speed one. If you want to farm, just replace that with movement speed. Just find the appropriate banner. For flasks, I have death defying. I wouldn't really use Conjurers, even if you're farming. This is just kind of strange. I wouldn't really imagine farming with Gunslinger, but you can do what you want to. Chronomatic to get your ultimate up quicker, and then I use Arcane for extra damage. You can use Trailblazing for speed if you really want to. For the gems, make sure you get the Class Gem, and if you want to do damage, get Berserk Battler. If you're going to farm with him, use Vampirian Vanquisher, although I don't think you're going to be farming with Gunslinger. I have Volatile Velocity, but you can obviously just have a different one like Cubic Curtain. You can also get Stinging Curse. That's a decent one for him as well, or you can just get any in general. It doesn't really matter which Empowered Gem you go for, but I just named you some of the good ones. The stats you want to go for are magic damage, crit damage, critical hit. Just make sure you have no boosts onto critical hit. Also, keep in mind that Gunslinger goes overboard on critical hit. He has extra, so that's why my Class Gem here has maximum health, and I have 102% total critical hit. For the Cosmics, just make sure you don't have critical hit and have all of the boosts into light, because that is the meta for Trove. And that's going to be the build for Gunslinger. Going over to the Neon Ninja here, he's going to be a really good farming character. A lot of people, and I mean a lot of people, like this character. He's kind of one of those characters that are kind of hard to build from like the ground up, but if you have good things to give to Neon Ninja, then he'll do pretty well. You can use him in Delves as well, but he's not going to be as as good against the bosses, and he's not going to be that good for high depth delves as well. But if you want to farm an Uber 9 or Uber 10 or wherever it may be, he's going to be good for that. He's a pretty decent speed farmer. But anyway, let's get on to the build. For Neon Ninja, I found that having around 230% attack speed is good. So for my hat, I have crit damage movement speed, and then for my weapon, I have crit damage movement speed, but for my face, I have attack speed movement speed. You're probably going to want to do attack speed, movement speed on all of your pieces. For Neon Ninja, just make sure you have Clone Jutsu for the hidden effect. That's going to be his best one. For food, just use Electrolytic crystals. That's going to be the best one in the game as of right now. For the allies, you can use Animated Jug for the movement speed, or you can use this one over here, King Koba, which gives you permanent 10 movement speed. If you have this Dev Dream one, you can use Clownish Kicker. This is a good one as well. Another good one is this one over here called Chester Eggington. For the banner, I just have the Permatorch upgraded and I have this movement speed one. For flasks, I use Conjurer's Vial. You can use Death Defying as well, and I use the Zealous emblem to get my energy back when I hit Q, and I use Trailblazing for the speed. If you don't do enough damage, you can just replace Zealous for the Martial emblem to do extra damage. For the subclass, I use the Candy Barb subclass. You can also use the Power Captain subclass for the Magic Find, or you can use the Knight subclass. For the gems, just make sure you have the Clash Gem for Neon Ninja. Get Pyrodisc because you're going to be farming with him. Vampire and Vanquisher because you're also going to want to farm with him. Cubic Curtain is a good one as well. And if you can't get another one, just get Explosive Epilogue because that's another alternative. The stats that you want to focus on are physical damage, crit damage, critical hit. Just make sure you have no boosts into critical hit. For the Cosmics, just make sure you don't have critical hit and have all your boosts into light because that is the meta for Trove. And that's going to be the build for Neon Ninja. Moving on to the Candy Barb. I'm not really a big fan of this class, but if you really do want to use him, you can use him for farming or for damage. Just know that there are classes out there that's better than him. But if you want to know how to build this character in particular, then let's check out the build for Candy Barb. For Candy Barb, I kind of built him with all HP, so just ignore this. I'm going to tell you the other way you can build Candy Barb. So you want to go for attack speed, movement speed, and if you're just going to go for straight damage, I don't think you're going to want to do that. Just go for attack speed, crit damage. But I would just go with attack speed, movement speed on everything. For the hidden effect, you want to go for spin to win. For the food, just go for Electrolytic crystals. That's going to be the best one in the game as of right now. The ally that I have on currently is this one called Walton, but you're probably going to be using a different one. You can use Animated Jug, or you can use King Koba, or you can use this Clownish Kicker one, or you can use Chester Eggington. It's kind of up to you on what you want to use. For the banner, I would go with a movement speed banner, upgraded Permatorch. Just make sure you find the right one. For the flasks, I have Death Defying. You can also use Conjures as a replacement. I have Chronomatic, Ignore Unyielding. You can use Trailblazing, or if you need damage, you can use Martial. And for the subclass, I have the Knight subclass. You can also use the Power Captain subclass. Moving on to the gems, the Clash Gem is optional. You can get that if you want to. I would go with Vampirian since you're probably going to be farming with Candy Barb. But for whatever reason, if you want to do damage, just use Berserk Battler. Cubic Curtain is going to be good. Pyrodisc is going to be good. It's kind of up to you. Explosive Epilogue is good. The stats that you want to focus on are physical damage, crit damage, and critical hit. Just make sure you have no boosts into critical hit. Ignore my HP build Candy Barb. Just make sure you have no boosts into critical hit, and then for the Cosmics, just make sure you don't have critical hit at all. You want to go for physical damage, crit damage, and all boosts into light. And that's going to be the build for Candy Barb. Moving on to the Fae Trickster. Now, I know a few people that actually play this character, but not a lot of people actually do. You can use this class for farming. It's not that bad. You can kind of just use your blinks to navigate through dungeon to dungeon, and if you use the Zealous emblem, you can just restore all of your energy, and since it does get kind of laggy, you can actually just throw your bombs to do damage, whereas just using your staff might cause lag and your hits just won't register. You can use this class for straight up DPS as well, but just know that there are classes that are better than him at that. But apart from that, let's get on to the build. For Fae Trickster, I have attack speed, movement speed. You're going to do that for all of your gear. You can use whichever hidden effect you want to for Fae Trickster. For the food, I would use Electrolytic crystals. This is the best one in the game as of right now. The ally that I would use is Orcheon. I don't have an upgraded banner for Fae Trickster, but if I did, I would have an upgraded U10 Permatorch with movement speed. I use Conjures. You can also use Death Defying. I use Zealous just so you can get your energy back quickly, and I use Trailblazing. If you don't do enough damage, just replace Zelius with Arcane, or you can replace Trailblazing with Arcane. It's up to you. I use the Candy Barb subclass for the movement speed, or you can use the Power Captain for the Magic Find, or you can use the Knight subclass. It's up to you. For the Fae Trickster, you can get his Clash Gem, go for Vampirian Vanquisher for farming, go for Pyrodisc for farming, and then you can use Cubic Curtain, you can use Explosive Epilogue, it's up to you. The stats that you want to focus on are magic damage, critical hit, no boosts onto critical hit. For the Cosmics, just make sure you don't have critical hit and have all of your boosts into light, since that is the meta for Trove, and that's going to be the build for Fae Trickster. Going over to the Shadowhunter, now this class is going to be really good for DPS and good for farming, so if you want a really good all-around character to use, this is going to be the character for you. You can use your dodge ability, which is your roll, and that gives you a bunch of movement speed. And not only that, but if you hold down your ultimate ability, you'll shoot little arrows, which will end up doing a lot of damage to bosses. So Shadowhunter is going to be a really good DPS character, and just in general with like your basic attack, you do a bunch of damage with that as well. So you can farm in Uberworlds with Shadowhunter, or you can also farm with him in Delves if you want to. If you ever find it to be laggy, just throw your stun ability, and that one will register, and if your basic attack doesn't, then yeah, just use your stun ability. But yeah, apart from that, let's get on to the build. For Shadowhunter, just keep in mind that this is the reworked Shadowhunter. He is one of the best characters in the game right now. For the hat, I have movement speed, crit damage. For the weapon, I have energy regen, movement speed. And for the face, I have crit damage, movement speed with physical damage there. Just make sure you have around 700 energy regen. If you can't, then that's okay as well. I just say that because your ultimate is just going to be you know, using your energy just like that. So that's going to be it for Shadowhunter there. For Shadowhunter, you can use whatever hidden effect you want to. For the food, you can use Freerange Electrolytic Crystals. This is the ally over here that I use for the energy regen. But if you want to just do regular farming and you don't want to do that, you can just use Animated Jug. You can also use King Koba. You can use this Dev Dream one if you have that, or you can use Chester Eggington. For the banner, I have energy regen. You can also just replace that with movement speed if you want to. For the flask, you can use Death Defying, or you can use Conjures if you have the Magic Find. You can use the Martial Emblem if you don't do enough damage. You can also replace the Silas emblem with Trailblazing if you really want to. I have the Bard subclass for extra damage, but you can also just use the Candy Barb one, or you can use the Power Captain one, or you can use the Knight subclass if you want to. For the gems, just make sure you have the Clash Gem for Shadowhunter. Go for Pyrodisc, go for Cubic Curtain. I don't have Pyrodisc, but I would go for that. And if you don't have any of those, you can get Explosive Epilogue, and then I would do Vampirian for farming, or you can go for Battle Berserk for damage. For the stats, I would do physical damage, crit hit, crit damage, no boosts onto critical hit. And then for the cosmics, I would do no critical hit and have all of your boosts into light, since that is the meta for Trove right now. And that's going to be the build for Shadowhunter. Moving on to the Ice Age. Now for Ice Age, you can use this class for both farming and for damage. If you ever use this character in Delves, and if you have a max Path Painter, you can actually go super quickly if you use your ultimate ability. So if you spam your icicles, you can actually just use that, the Path Painter, and use your ultimate to get your movement speed triggers, and you'll be going super fast through the Delves. I like to use this class as a speed farmer, and if you have his Clash Gem, it's actually pretty good because if you group enemies, you'll be able to do more damage to those enemies if you're just on top of them. But anyway, let's get on to the build. For Ice Age, I really like the movement speed build. So I have attack speed, movement speed, but if you really want to, you can replace movement speed for crit damage if you just want damage. And I have attack speed, movement speed on all of my pieces here. You can use whatever hidden effect you want to. The best food in the game is this one over here, Electrolytic Crystals, as of right now. You can use this ally over here called Orcheon. This is the torch that I have, upgraded banner U10. You can also replace this with the movement speed one. For flasks, you can use Death Defying, you can use Conjures. I would just stick with Death Defying. And if you really want extra flasks, you can use this one. Then I would do Chronomatic just to get your cooldowns quicker, and Arcane for extra damage. But if you really want to, you can replace it with Trailblazing for the speed. For the subclass, I would use the Knight subclass, or you can use the Candy Barb, the Pyre Captain, or the Bard one. For the gems, just make sure you get the Clash Gem, Berserk Battler if you want to do damage, or Vampirian for farming. You can do Pyrodisc for farming as well. I would do Cubic Curtain, that's a good one, or you can get Explosive Epilogue, but it does cause knockback, so it's up to you. The stats that you want is magic damage, critical hit, crit damage, no boosts into critical hit. For the cosmics, just make sure you don't have critical hit and have all boosts into light, because that is the meta for Trove, and that's going to be the build for Ice Age. Going over to the Pyre Captain. Now this isn't like my most favorite class, but he's alright. He kind of feels pretty quick to use if you farm with him. So if you really do want to, you can farm with him, but you can also just use him for DPS. It's kind of up to you on what you want to do if you play this character. In the gameplay provided, I just kind of nitro farmed with him because I don't know, I don't really farm with him. I don't really do damage with him, so this is just what I'm going to do with him. He's not really a long range type character. You have to get up close and you have turrets that you can throw down. But anyway, let's get on to the build. Now, Power Captain actually feels like a pretty quick character, so you could farm with him if you want to, or you can just do damage. It's kind of up to you. I have attack speed, movement speed, but if you really want to, you can replace movement speed with crit damage. And I have health regen on my face, just you can do movement speed, attack speed. I also have energy regen on my weapon, just ignore my stats right now. For the hidden effect, I would go for a Vast Yi on the bottom that you can see there. For the food, I would go for this one over here called Electrolytic Crystals. For the ally, you can use Orcheon over here. For the banner, I would use the attack speed or the movement speed one for him, the upgraded U10 Permatorch. For the flask, you can use Death Defying or you can use the Conjurer's one for farming, but I wouldn't really use that one. I would just stick with Death Defying, or you could, it's kind of up to you. You can use Arcane for extra damage. You can use this Master's Magician emblem, or it's the same thing as Evil Eye, or you can use Chronomatic, or you can use Trailblazing. It's up to you on how you play Pyre Captain. Next up, you can use the Knight subclass, or you can use the Bard one for extra damage, or you can use the Candy Barb for the movement speed. For the Pyre Captain, you can use any gem that you want for the Empowereds, but I would go with the Clash gem. Go for Berserk Battler if you want to do damage, or Vampirian Vanquisher if you want to go for speed. You can go for Pyrodisc, you can go for Cubic Curtain, you can go for Explosive Epilogue. You can kind of go with whatever you want to for the Empowered gems. For the gems, just make sure you have critical hit, magic damage, critical damage with no boosts into critical hits. For the Cosmics, just make sure you have no critical hit and have all of your boosts into light, because that is the meta for Trove, and that's going to be the build for Pyre Captain. Last but not least, we have the Knight here, and this is going to be an underrated farming class because not many people actually take off his Clash gem to farm like this. If you get his Clash gem, you get a different ability, but if you don't have the Clash gem, you can actually just fly and use energy. But if you have the Zealous emblem, you can just press Q and just restore all of your energy just to fly again. So it's pretty cool. You can just fly dungeon to dungeon and then, just kill everything you need to in that dungeon and just move on to the next one. It's pretty fun. I recommend them. And if you want to know how to build them, let's get on to that. For Knight, you're going to want to go for attack speed, movement speed. It's going to be a pretty good farming class. And I use energy regen on the weapon. For the hidden effect, you can use Overcharge. For the food, you can use this one over here, Freerange Electrolytic Crystals. This is the best one in the game as of right now. For the ally, you can use Animated Jug, you can use King Koba, you can use this Dev Dream one if you have it, or you can use Chester Eggington. For the flask, you can use Death Defying, or you can use Conjurers. You can go with the Martial emblem if you need the extra bit of damage. You can use the Zealous emblem to restore your energy, or you can replace one of them with Trailblazing. It is up to you. For the subclass, you can use the Pyre Captain subclass for the Magic Find. You can use the Candy Barb one if you want to for the movement speed. It is up to you. For the gems, I would replace the Clash gem with something else. Just don't get his Clash gem because you can turn this into a flying ability, and I would go with Vampirian, Cubic Curtain, Pyrodisc, and just anything you want, like Explosive Epilogue or just anything in general for the Empowered gems. The stats that you want is physical damage, crit damage, critical hit with no boosts. And for the Cosmics, just make sure you have no critical hit and have all of your boosts into light, because that is the meta for Trove. And that's going to be the build for Knight. If you guys have made it to the end, thank you guys so much, and just in general, thank you all for the overwhelming amount of support. Like I said in the beginning, let me know how I did in the comments down below. I do apologize for this being super long, but as you can see, there are 17 classes, and I want to make sure you guys have the information for each class. I didn't want to ramble on too much about how to use each class and just get into very detailed specifics. If you have any questions about anything, drop it down in the comments down below and I'll do my best to answer it. If for whatever reason your comment doesn't have a response from me, then I just didn't get notified for it for some reason, but I will do my best to reply to every single comment. Also, another thing that I wanted to mention is that I wanted to make this video like 6 months ago, but with all the class reworks and just like me not having a lot of time in general, I kind of just pushed it off to the side, and I figured now would be a good time to upload because the rework for Shadowhunter just went through and there were a bunch of buffs and nerfs that happened. So as soon as that came out, I just wanted to upload this video and give you guys the most accurate information I possibly can. If I missed something, then drop something down in the comments down below and I'll pin your message. Like I said, I apologize for the length of the video, but timestamps are included, so hopefully that helps you guys. But anyway, if you have enjoyed, drop a like, subscribe if you're brand new to the channel, and